Welcome to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. Each week on this program, Jeff and his guests share their expertise, personal anecdotes, and the latest industry news to keep you in the loop. Now, to provide you with insight and help you navigate the consistently changing world of real estate lending, here is your host for The Mortgage Voice, Jeff Barton.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton. I'm your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929 is our telephone number. Thank you very much for watching the show. Thanks for coming each and every week. We try to get to you some information that is useful when you're trying to buy a house, when you're trying to refinance a house. Maybe you need some money because you want to go back to school, or you have a family member that's ill, or you're looking for an investment so that the next few years you don't have to worry about that retirement because you've put it into something that you can continually get residual income. There's all kinds of needs that you might ask questions about if you're looking for that kind of information. One of them is, what kind of rate am I going to get? Can I qualify if I'm not a strict W-2? I have a fixed income, but I have a lot of assets. All of these questions that you can ask about the loan are important. And I think to get that kind of good information, you've got to seek out professionals. But unfortunately, out there in the marketplace, professionals like myself, and I must admit, if you call me on the phone at the office, and I work for Malibu Funding as well, they're the ones that sponsor the show, but if you do call me at the office, I'm going to want to try to keep you as a client and make some money off you. And that's the way it is out there in the marketplace. Anybody you talk to is going to give you a slightly different story, making them out to be and sound like the best thing that there is out there. Best thing since sliced bread, they used to say. Well, the Mortgage Voice is a place that you can go each and every week, and we've been on the air for over 5 years, that you can learn things about the mortgage industry, about rates, about people. You can learn things about how I deal with problems, how people in the industry deal with problems, so that you can get a feel and genuine information to make better decisions. That's why we started the show. That's why we're still on the air. And I think trying to do that is a service that the industry owes to the people out there who support us. Obviously, anybody that needs a loan, anybody that needs to buy a house, anybody that needs to sell a house and invest the money into something else mortgage related is going to use services like we have at my company, and certainly the Mortgage Voice tries to bring that information to you. Today is no exception. We got a ton of different guests, great guests, talking about the real estate market. So let's get into it right away. The Mortgage Voice is going to have about an hour's worth of show today, Saturday and Sunday on KCAA, KMET, and K-Tahoe. Want to say thanks to all those great people in the different areas that we do service. We have about, 5 hours of programming each and every week. And during those 5 hours, as I said, bringing to you this type of information is interesting for me in that I get feedback all during the week from clients, from people who listen to the show. We had a lady call me last week from the Inland Empire. Actually, she was driving from Las Vegas, Nevada to the Inland Empire, and she called and she asked me about what the show topic was and some of the things about different types of loans that you can get, whether it be a non-QM type of loan or a conventional loan or even a low down payment loan like an FHA, which is 3.5% down. And I got to talk to her about the show and what she liked and what she didn't like. And I finally realized that the service that is provided by shows like this and others on the air that try to educate the consumer is of value because it's kind of a mystery as to what happens. And let me give you an example. We are inundated with technology all the time and all over the place. And in the mortgage industry, there is a push to eliminate people and jobs, people you talk to, either your underwriter or maybe some of your processing duties. Now, these terms, underwriting and processing, there are people in those jobs who look at your loan and try to decide whether you're a good credit risk or a bad credit risk. Now, everybody knows about credit scores, FICO, whether they be TransUnion, Equifax, or whatever the other one is. What is it?
Experian.
Thank you, Experian. Experian's the one I always forget because they're the ones who got into trouble by losing about $500 million worth of names and addresses.
And they're the ones that have an advertisement saying keep your identity safe from the dark web Call us.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it safe from the dark web. Although if you do call us, you're understanding, of course, that we lost your stuff the last time. So if we lose it this time, well,
We are the dark web.
exactly. But anyway, these credit decisions that are made via your credit score, we all know what that is, and we all know what risk means. So if the scale is like, say, 400 to 850 in terms of your credit score, you're falling somewhere in the middle. And did you know that the average credit score in the U.S. is above 700? Now, 700 is a pretty good credit score. It means that you're paying your bills on time, that you have capacity within the credit itself to be able to borrow more, and it shows a credit worthiness over the last 18 months to 24 months, saying that, yes, what you're doing right now is more important than what you did 5 or 6 years ago, and you're a very good credit risk at 700 to 800 FICO scores. But some of the risks out there you're unaware of. For instance, the documentation that's presented to the underwriter is gathered by a professional, either at the bank, somebody that you walk in and give your W-2s or your information about how much money you make, and they run your credit score and they try to determine whether you can repay that loan, or whether you give that information to a mortgage broker, a professional or a mortgage banker, somebody who sits there and takes that information. You're not aware of it, but there are risks by taking that information, using that information, and handing it over to the underwriter, the person at the lender who is taking a look at this same information and evaluating it through whatever credit risk scores that they have. They're trying to figure out whether you will repay the loan and if you're worthy of the credit. But understand that those risks are quite a bit different because they are unknown. The documentations are coming to them. And last year, we talked about it several times on the show. There was a ton of fraud out there in the marketplace about employers who were fraudulent. Fannie Mae came out with a list of about 45, 50 of them in Southern California, eventually spread to Northern California, and there's probably a couple thousand loans, maybe more, and a couple hundred brokers, maybe more, involved in what happened. And explaining that or trying to assess risk when you're an underwriter, and really the only thing as an underwriter you're doing is to say, okay, I have this documentation in front of me. Let's use technology to verify the information. Now, technology, again, is only as good as the information you're putting into the technology to actually trace whether the validity of the documentation is any good. Anybody will tell you who's in computer input that it is only as good as the information you input. User error. Anybody heard of that one? Happens all the time. Happens to me. I'm an older guy. I don't type as well as I should. I don't see as well as I should. How many people in the business are texting their friends while they're doing input into the computer and while they're supposed to be looking at one screen and merging when they hit the wrong button and all of a sudden information disappears? It happens. Human error happens. Now, the automation in technology in the mortgage profession is, again, only as good as the people trying to either evaluate the information or input the information. So all that given what it is, the risk in lending is acute, and it had become more acute last year than it did the following or the previous 2 or 3 years. So what do we have now in the mortgage marketplace? And for those of you out there who are listening to the show, understand that this may be why your loan is taking a little bit longer, or maybe they're asking for more conditions on your loan. Conditions are, hey, we got all this stuff, now we need some more stuff. And so given the fact that conditions and more information is needed is slowing down your loan process, it's because the information in the system is either confusing or they need verification, or the entire system is under attack, i.e. like last year with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, that employer information was fraudulent. All of this is taken into account when they're assessing your loan. If you're thinking that this is a slow process and your loan should take less than 30 days, think about that for a second. Would you loan the type of money to people in order to be able to make money on 30 days' notice if you have questions on the file? Now, the advent of larger non-QM loans, i.e. not Fannie and Freddie loans, have led to underwriting relaxing a little bit. I want to talk about that in the next section. I'm Jeff Barton. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for tuning in. And I am the Mortgage Voice, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton. I'm your voice for the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929 is our telephone number. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. We talk mortgages. We talk your desire to either get a mortgage, maybe sell your house, buy something else, anything mortgage related. We also talk about real estate. We talk about all things money and how you can improve your life by either investing in real estate, maybe getting a property that gives you some residual income down the line when you're retiring. But all of this is inclusive in what we try to do each and every week, which is to bring you great information. To that end, we bring to the show a person who has not been on the show, but somebody who I really wanted to talk to because of the fact that she deals with the dreaded three-letter IRS and the problems that you as a borrower or you as a consumer get into with them. And Patty Green is with us and joining us now, and she's with the PZG Law Firm. And Patty, how are you? And thanks for coming on the show.
I'm fine. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to ask a dumb question. Please forgive me. What is the most common issue the IRS has? And obviously it's about money, right? But what's the most common thing that people get in trouble with the IRS that you step in and help them with?
Well, it depends. In certain, you've got two different areas. You've got the individual taxpayer,
right,
and then you have your companies, your corporations, and so forth. So if we were talking just on an individual basis, which affects almost all of us in
right,
some way or form, generally what I see a lot of is audits that go unanswered.
Right.
And so generally, you're given a certain amount of time, and during that time, IRS is expecting the taxpayer to respond with whatever inquiry that they have. And if they don't, then they will disallow whatever was in question. And so the taxpayers are getting this hideous letter that says, you now owe, $14,000, or we disallowed this, you need to pay this, and then panic starts. And what taxpayers don't realize is that a lot of that could have been prevented had they responded to the initial audit.
I see. So in the initial request, I bet a lot of people say, "Oh, I didn't get that," or maybe any number of different excuses that would come up. How do you handle the difficulty of trying to get the client to trust you, or are they in such a panic mode that they just need help?
Usually when they come to me, trust is never a really big issue because they're in a bind. And they need the help.
Okay, so when they do come with you, they're in a bind. Well, what's the first thing you tell them? Do you tell them to relax? Do you have a magic formula for them, or is it a systematic approach that you take with each client?
I do. I have a systematic approach because a lot of times the client, the IRS is going to, any documentation that a client receives from the IRS, it's going to go to the last known address, and that last known address is the address that was on their last filed return.
Right.
So if you're filing returns every year, that's going to be pretty current. But if you haven't filed in a few years and moved during that interim period, then there's a real probability that those letters went to someone else, which is also quite dangerous because those letters tend to would have a lot of sensitive information that someone else now has been able to see. But the systematic approach that I do is first I calm the taxpayer because there's nothing that can't be resolved. And that's the first thing I want to give people some peace of mind. It can always be resolved. It may not always be resolved exactly how we want it, but there is a solution, and it just takes, let's head it on, head first, and then let's just dig in. So I always get them to bring everything that they have, the most recent letter, because that's going to give me some idea of what's going on.
Right.
Once they do that, then I have them usually, I'll start with what I call an investigation.
Right.
Where I have them complete a power of attorney that authorizes me to access their file. And that way I can pull transcript as far back as, 10 years to see where something went wrong. Maybe they were audited and did not realize they were audited, and
Does that letter, power of attorney, authorize you to also speak directly with the IRS, or is that only on the shoulders of the person being audited?
So what that allows me to do, there's two letters that are available. There's two authorizations. One is an 8821, which only authorizes me to review documentation, review the transcripts and so forth, and request transcripts. The power of attorney, which is the 2848, actually authorizes me to negotiate on behalf of the taxpayer.
Great.
So when a client has become a client, when someone becomes a client, that's usually what I do, because then I can go ahead and actually dig in there, pull the transcripts, talk to any IRS personnel regarding anything, and even negotiate some solutions. Of course, all of this is done with the client fully aware of where we're at.
Right.
Once I do that investigation, I sit down with the client and I say, okay, this is what I found, and these are your options. And then the client can decide which option they want to take based on their individual circumstances and what's going to be in their best interest.
I
So
see.
once we do that, then I begin the actual resolution of whatever it is their issue may be.
I see. So, and the issue is always about you owe money, and let's see if we can get that particular number as low as possible, right?
Generally, it is, but you know what? Sometimes it can just be, like I said, there could have been an initial inquiry by the IRS where they wanted just a little more information that was never provided, and because it wasn't provided, then they disallowed whatever that taxpayer was thinking they were going to receive. Let's say, for example, it was a credit, a child tax credit. They just wanted to confirm that the child did in fact live in the residence during the time that they're claiming this credit. And if they never provide that information, they'll disallow it. So what happens is if they disallow that credit, now the refund or the tax liability, whatever that might be, is going to be adjusted accordingly. And so sometimes it's just a matter of fixing a problem.
Right.
One of the things I see a lot, Jeff, is there's a lot of preparers out there that unfortunately it becomes more of a business in terms of let's push these through, push them through, let's see how many we can get done. And they're not taking the time to ask questions that might be helpful in preparing a more accurate return. Things could change from one year to the next. And what I like to do with my clients is sit down and say, okay, what changed since last year? Did you guys move? Did you, do any kind of side work or anything that might be helpful to make sure that the return is prepared accurately? Because ultimately, that's what's going to trigger an audit. If there's something in there, maybe they did some contract work that they totally forgot about because it was so early in the year, and they moved and didn't get the 1099. But that 1099 was still sent to the IRS. The IRS has a record that they received $2,500, but they didn't show that on the return. That's going to trigger an audit.
Let me ask you a question. Now that you brought up the changes, new tax law went into effect, I guess it was about a year ago, right? But it's affecting everybody's returns this year. What do you see as some of the red flags that might be thrown up as a result of the changing tax codes that people have to be concerned with?
To be honest with you, right now, I'm not gonna say I've seen a whole lot going on. The only thing that I think is going to impact people, especially where you're in the mortgage industry, is there were some changes that will affect homeowners. The standard deduction, which is the amount of money that the IRS kind of, it's like a gimme. They say, okay, you can just take this much off your gross proceeds, your gross income, and then we'll start working from there.
Okay.
That used to be about, let's say, for a married filing joint couple, it was about $12,000 and some change. I'm not even sure exactly the exact amount. That was double, so that's $24,000. So the taxpayer can deduct this gimme, this freebie. They have two options. They can either deduct a standard amount that the IRS says, okay, this is what it's going to be for everybody if they choose to take the standard amount, or they can itemize. If they itemize, it's because between all these different deductions that they allow you to take add up to more than what the standard deduction is. So you can take whichever one is going to be more beneficial.
I see.
And so one of the items that was affected this year, and it affects a lot of Californians, some of the more expensive states where housing is much more expensive, are going to be impacted by this change.
Patty, I'm going to have to cut it short. Unfortunately, we're up against the clock once again.
Okay.
This is great information. I want to have you back on the show, but could you shout out your phone number for people so that they listening can get a pen out and write down your phone number to get a hold of you?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. It's area code 951-454-1658.
Patty, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And as I said, I want to get you back on maybe next month, right before tax time, to talk more about this.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to do it, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much as well. And that's Patty Green from PZG Law Firm. I'm Jeff Barton. I'm your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I am Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929, our telephone number if you pick up the phone. And if you give us a call, or if you write down the phone number and call us later, we'll try to get to the questions that you ask. Most frequently, they're asked, hey, how much can I borrow? You know, and there are 6 simple questions to answer that. 1, W-2 or independent. 2, what's your Social Security? 3, your name. 4, your address. 5, what are your prospects for keeping your job at its current employment level for the next, 25 years? And 6, of course, do you have any outstanding debts that you haven't told me about? If you can answer me those 6 questions, I could probably tell you how much you can borrow. It's a pretty simple process, but our next guest is well aware of that since he's one of the top real estate agents for Bridgeport Real Estate, serving all of Southern California. With us once again, Dave Doyle. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing good today, Jeff.
Great. Excellent. Okay. The $1,000,000 question is, are prices finally starting to level off, or are we still seeing an increase in cost to properties where you service?
No, I've actually seen a stabilization of the pricing right now.
Okay.
We hit a peak last year in September, thereabouts, and had a mild self-correction by a few points over the last 3-4 months. And now we're back pretty stable again. So with favorable interest rates, take a little dip right now, and prices got themselves back in line. We are doing well.
Okay, excellent. So, and I agree with you. I think we had a more than a little correction in some parts of the places, especially in Southern California. Prices really took a dive in terms of where they had been going up 5 to 6% a year. They were really negative a little bit in the last quarter of the last year. Why do you think that is?
That is a $1 million question.
Right.
I have seen corrections at 3% to 7%, depending on which specific city or town. And, part of it, every 2 years, for whatever reason, we seem to get this lull now when there's national elections. That affects our pricing. It affects our home flow. I've just noticed it for the past, every 2 years for the past 6. So for the past 3 cycles of national elections, we've seen almost the brakes put on for real estate come that 6 weeks or so before the November elections.
Do you think that affects older people or younger people, i.e. the baby boomers or the millennials, which are the 2 biggest consumers for housing in the U.S.? Do you think it affects one group more than the other group, and maybe that's why you've seen this election cycle? Because I'm looking at the elections that have come and gone over the past 20 years, and quite honestly, most of it is not that interesting to me, in that I have very little to say about it. Do you think the younger generation is more into it, therefore they drop everything and watch?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of twofold. We do properties from time to time out in some retirement communities of Santa Clarita and also in Palm Springs area.
Right.
And I have had clients out there who are like, oh, they're so tied up with what's going on politically, they're holding their brakes before they list their property or before they go out, and let's wait before we do offers. Now, here's a flip side to that. I have a 35-year-old couple who we throw their house on market mid-December, which is probably the worst month to list a property,
right,
with Christmas and everything. We listed literally 8 days before Christmas and sold it in a week to another younger couple who's right below 30. Now, granted, beautiful house, beautiful community where homes don't come up for sale that often.
Right.
But if the property shows well and it's priced correctly, it'll sell, regardless. But when you're trying to, push the limits on how much can I get for my property, and you're
Right.
listing it at that top end, and you're not taking the time or the money to actually do what you need to do to a property, you're going to sit there for a while. You really have to be geared toward getting that property set up, cleaned up, staged, just the minor things, the things that don't even cost much money, and it night and day difference.
Pricing. Let's talk about that for a second. Chasing the market, which is what I think you were referring to.
Yeah.
Some sellers just have to get a certain price. When I hear that from a seller, I think there needs to be some education done here. How do you handle that particular client when they say, I'll sell it, but I have to get X amount of dollars?
From a listing agent standpoint, you better lock them into a long-term listing agreement because it's going to be one of those.
Right.
When someone is dead set on, I have to have this price, then I have to sit and have that tough conversation with them.
Right.
In order for us to get that price, here's what you need to do to this property. And if that's, as simple as getting personal memorabilia out of the house and painting a few rooms or doing a few things like that, or even having a landscaper trim down some bushes and trees that are overgrown, whatever it may be, if they're not willing to do those things, but they're still dead set on getting that price, sometimes you're better off walking away from the listing.
Right.
I hate to be that blunt about it, but all of us, our time is valuable. And hey, if my neighbor's house just sold for $860,000, I want the same for my house, and I'm like, have you walked through and seen the neighbor's house? Yeah, new kitchen, new bath.
Yeah.
They have nice hardwood floors that are real.
Right. New roof, new heating, air conditioning. Right. Exactly. It's more than just, apples to apples here. You've got a different house. When you have these conversations with sellers, how long before the realization of what's going on in the marketplace catches up to the mind of the seller who's just been watching the market go up, up, up?
90 days.
Yeah. Okay.
It varies obviously with every client. But you have some clients, I kind of try and flip it around on them. I go, all right, fine. You think your house is worth this amount, jump in my car, let's go for a drive. And I like to go out and show them a couple other properties that are at that same price point in the same neighborhood and ask them, and if they have a neighbor or somebody or a friend or relative with them too. Let's go look at these other properties because that's your competition.
Right.
And you tell me which one you would pay that amount for.
Right.
And why. And that's a tough pill for some people to swallow. Some people won't go look. They think they know it all.
Yeah. That's what we find a lot in our business. We, as professionals, always get denigrated. I mean, we don't have the same schooling credentials as lawyers and doctors, but we're of the same professional ilk, and the experience and the expertise that we bring to it sometimes gets denigrated and overlooked as if somehow there's more information and knowledge by the buyer and seller. And I'm the first one to admit I don't know everything, but 25 years in the business, I know something.
Absolutely. You know what? It's funny you say that because I've been in the business going on, 18 years.
Right.
And the hard part with it is now we have all these new solar things that are part of packages.
Right.
We're learning something new on every single escrow depending on how they got their solar.
Right.
And each one is like, us and escrow and the sellers are all like, oh, my God.
Right.
Didn't see that one coming. This
Right.
is something new. If we don't keep an open mind to what the market is dictating, which solar is now part of what market dictates.
That's right.
We have to keep that open mind. We have to be realistic with what's going on. And we have to, one of the biggest hurdles I get is the square footage pricing.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, square footage pricing has its place in every market. But when you're dealing in more of your rural areas, it's very different because I can go down to a city area and square footage pricing is pretty much the starting point and it goes up from there. It's going to stay within a certain range. But we come out to some of these outlining areas, hey, it's not just square footage, it's property size, it's access, it's condition, it's the whole thing.
Right, and there's a whole different category of loans to deal with specific properties in rural areas where you don't have comparables like upon like, which is what you're referring to in the square footage analysis.
Yeah, it is a very, so trying to educate your seller to do two things, okay? First off, we try and not ignore square footage, but that's just our guideline.
Right.
Secondly, when they're looking at all these different online providers, be it Zillow or all the other ones that are out there, they give you their estimate of what your home is worth. The easiest rule I tell them is, well, great. Here's Zillow saying this house is worth this amount and this house over here is worth that amount. We've walked and looked at those properties and they're trashed.
Right. Right.
It's just an algorithm that guesses.
Right. It's a total guess.
And it's a total guess.
Right. And because of that, it puts the market at a disadvantage because you're really getting bad info.
Not just bad info for the seller, bad info for buyers.
Right.
Buyers are looking at, here's the value of what they're saying online for this property, and it's overpriced, and they won't even go look. And I try and educate all of them, please, you have to almost ignore that. I mean, I wish they would completely ignore it, but that's almost impossible to do. But if you actually go out and you look, okay, I have two houses on the same street, Zillow's saying they're both worth the same amount because they're similar square footage.
Right.
But then we go and we walk and we look at both those homes, and one is, new this, new that, to the nines. They removed walls. They redid the whole thing and landscaped and beautiful. And the other one is original from 1974.
Right. Hey, Dave, I got to run.
House.
I'm up against the clock here, man. I'm really sorry, but that's very true and very much what we deal with every day. But thanks for coming on the show and educating all of us as to what's going on in the marketplace right now.
Always glad to be of help. And anybody ever needs help, you can always pick up the phone and call anytime. I actually enjoy doing this.
Great. And what's your telephone number? Just shout it out for somebody who's listening.
661-373-6577.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dave. I really appreciate it. That's David Doyle from Bridgeport Real Estate, and I am Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry, 888-713-2929. That's the telephone number. We've been talking today about what's going on in the mortgage place, what's going on in the real estate market, all things that are happening in the news media. And Daryl and I were talking about, I don't know if anyone saw that Michael Jackson, I guess it was a documentary done, and then the follow-up with Oprah Winfrey. But we were talking, and the only reason to bring it up now is just, it's very difficult to understand truth from fiction, right? In the world, in the marketplace, whether it's you're selling a house, but you're not quite honest about, maybe you had some termite work done 6 months earlier, but you failed to disclose, right? Okay, that's quite a bit different than what these accusers are accusing you of, but at the same time, further and further you get away from an actual act, the information that is displayed to you is very difficult to verify. But Daryl, what did you think of that from last night yourself?
I did not actually see the documentary myself, but I had lunch about a week and a half ago with Ron Alexenberg. And Ron was head of CBS, Epic Records, CBS Records, and he's the one that signed Michael Jackson to the Epic label.
I see.
And took the record company from like $60 million to $600 million in sales over a fairly short period of time.
Right.
And he knew Michael extremely well. And he had some bad things to say about Michael's father, as many people do, and wonderful things to say about Michael's mother. But his comment was that Michael was not guilty of any of those things as far as the child molestation.
Well, I did see parts of the documentary. It's tough. I mean, if you've been involved, and I know many people who listen to the show and many people out there have been involved in some form of abuse, some kind of assault, there's something in your family history, the people that you know and love that have been involved in this, and it's very, very difficult to remain on the sidelines or to remain neutral. But I did see it. I found both of the guys that were talking, who then, I watched their wives and their family. I found them to be credible. I don't know whether they got paid to do this documentary. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what the incentive is. They certainly can't go after the estate. But I found it engaging television and believable. So, there again, when you're dealing in any situation that has this mass appeal, it's very difficult, much like the OJ case, right?
Well, a lot of times, the people that put together films have taken a side.
Have to.
Right. They're not neutral.
Right.
Right. It's like, I've taught journalism in college. And, if you show a journalism class the same film, you divide them half and half, right? And you show them a film and say, guess the speed of the car that smashed into this wall.
Right.
Right. And you show the same film and say, guess the speed of the car that tapped into this wall. There's a 30-mile-per-hour discrepancy between the two guesses.
Right.
The people you say smashed into the wall will say, oh, it was going 40 miles an hour. And if you say tapped into the wall, they say, oh, it was going 10, 15 miles an hour. It's the same film, right? So you can use explosive language to
prejudice the person who you're asking for an unbiased opinion of.
Correct.
And that would be the same whether it's the Archdiocese of Los Angeles with the priest molestation cases, whether it's, and again, I bring this up because the perception of what's going on in the marketplace, whether you're buying a house or whether you're, dealing in a difficult situation through a real estate transaction, is simply that it's very difficult to get calm, to understand something as it is, to look at a situation and come up with reasoning behind what it is you need to make a decision on, because we're all emotional about it. We're all emotional about whether it's this situation, which is extremely emotional and infuriating to me, whether a child gets hurt for any reason, and at the same time, now I'm calm and I have to go back to work and I'm talking to people about their real estate needs without getting somewhat emotional on that. When I hear the same complaint about the lack of professionalism, somebody's not calling me back, I can't get an honest answer, the terms changed at the end of the deal, and this would either be from a buyer, a seller, or a professional in the business.
Well, there's so many moving parts. Right?
So many.
And there's so many things, so many little details that people could pick on and say, oh, well, they didn't tell me this, or they didn't tell me that, or this is not true, or, didn't call me back as scheduled. Even putting this radio show together, sometimes we can't get a hold of the guest exactly on time.
Right.
And it was an unforeseen circumstance. They were on a phone call that ran late, or they're out of cell service, or their battery, we just don't know sometimes.
Okay, so we talked about natural disasters on the show because they're a part of our life in Southern California. And as whether you believe or don't believe, hey, listen, climates are changing. Look out the window. We are in the biggest rainfall we've had in, forever.
It hasn't rained like this. I'm from Southern California.
Right.
I was born and raised in LA County. It has not rained like this since I was in elementary school.
Exactly. So given that, I live in Malibu, California, as everyone knows, and before everyone gets all, oh my gosh, he must be loaded. No, we happened to buy at a time where there was a recession. I had some money in the bank. We put a down payment, and thank God we got a loan that we were still able to continue to pay for the time until we paid it off. We've lived out there a long time. But the fire that ripped through Malibu, my wife was telling me the other day, it started at the 101. Now, just give you a picture of the area for those who are not familiar. The 101 freeway, which goes pretty much all up and down the state of California, it is about 15 miles from the ocean from where the fire started. So between the time it started and started to come towards the ocean, 5 hours. Along a 15-mile swath of land. Yet in Malibu and a lot of the communities, there is tremendous anger that the fire department didn't stop the fire or at least fight the fire long enough. And there are endless examples of incompetence. There's always incompetence. Why? Because we're human beings and nobody's, perfect and can get it out. But I'm like, that is a fast-moving fire. And this wall of smoke, must have gone up 500 feet. And the flames, it's amazing, but that's the same information that I see as to overwhelmed. These people want to be blamed for having a fire not being able to be put out. It's It's the perception of the reality. So what is the reality? Whether it's Michael Jackson, whether it's, the weather that we're seeing each and every day, whether there's, something going on with global warming or not, or whether it's the fire that the fire department did or did not help. It's a perception of what's going on.
It's the same people that didn't evacuate when they were told to, or the fire department's busy trying to find those guys.
Well, exactly, like you said.
And not fight the fire.
Right, well, the president of Pepperdine, right, told all the kids to shelter in place rather than get them on buses and get them out of town, right? So they had a large amount of fire protective services around Pepperdine University in Malibu rather than out fighting fires to save houses. Yeah, that was an issue, certainly. So if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're going, what the heck does this have to do with... Well, the real estate market, yeah, exactly. The perception that you have of the value of your property. We had a guest on earlier talking about the way sellers see their properties, the way sellers value what they have versus the reality in the marketplace. Buyers are the same way. Buyers, and I worked with a buyer about a year ago, and we went to 50 properties. We wrote 14 contracts. We got into 3 or 4 escrows, right? At each point, they backed out. At whatever point that was, because it wasn't worth what they thought. The garage isn't correct. The HOA is too much. They're too intrusive. They're not telling us about. Many years ago in sales, and you probably understood this. And I was just getting into the mortgage business. And I was reading contracts, and I'm like, I'm not going to sign this. This language is horrible and onerous. Well, if you get into a sales contract with anybody, it's either you sign it or you walk away. And the person who was on the other end said to me of the contract, said, look, you want to do business or do you want to read the contract all day? And that's really what it boils down to for me.
It's a contract of adhesion.
Right.
You do not get a chance to negotiate terms and conditions.
No, you don't.
It's either they're signing.
So what I wanted to do was fix my magic ink to it, that the ink would disappear after a certain amount of time so that there would be no way, hey, I didn't sign that, show me, where did I sign it, Anyway, thanks, Daryl, for jumping in. I'm Jeff Barton, everybody. I'm your host for the Mortgage Voice, and we're on each and every week. We got one more session, one more little segment in the show, and then that'll be it for the day. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to The Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. 888-713-2929. That's our telephone number. And if you pick up the phone or if you write down the number and you've got questions about what you hear on the show, or you're just thinking about buying or selling property, write down the questions, call that number. Or if you go, Malibu Funding is the company that actually is the sponsor for the show. So I really appreciate that they spend the money each and every week to get me on the air to inform everybody about what's happening in our market, both in the mortgage and real estate world. But on their website, malibufunding.net, you can see maybe 40, 50 different loan officers or real estate agents there who can help you answer questions, especially if you don't like the sound of my voice, or if you're watching me on YouTube or on KCAA or KMET and you don't like how I look, you certainly can find somebody else that you do. Now, a lot of times we don't have the answers. You know what? I'm not omnipotent. I'm not somebody who can say I am the perfect answer for every solution. I'm not. And so what we do is we bring to the show people from different companies, different areas, walks of life in the real estate and mortgage worlds that can help you if I can't. And so one of those people who is gracious enough to come back on the show out from Murrieta, California, Marcos Sanchez from eXp Realty of California. Marcos, this is the first time on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay, you have a wide and varied background. I know that you have some martial arts experience, which leads me to the first question. Discipline in our business is very, very important. How have you found your experience in the martial arts world help you in the real estate world?
Well, I think it's transferred over pretty well for me in my case, because martial arts does have a lot to do with both mental and physical discipline. Coming into the real estate world, I've been able to apply those same practices to it. Time blocking became very natural to me. in that, we start our day off exactly the same way and we go through our day exactly the same way. We're able to adapt if something comes up, but, we stay on point. We continue to do things that work. We throw out the things that don't work, and we, work to improve it as we move along.
Excellent. Now, EXP Realty of California, the office is up in the Murrieta area, or do you have several offices in the area as well?
They're actually, EXP is in all 50 states, including Canada.
Okay.
Our office is in Temecula, just on the border of Murrieta.
Uh-huh.
So the southern portion of Temecula is where we're actually located at.
Okay. What attracted you to the real estate world? Was it the kind of make your own schedule, and because you're disciplined, that was easy, or was it just, other things like helping people? What attracted you to the business?
I've always actually, one of the things that I've noticed in business, I worked for many, many years in automotive, was the fact that one way, shape, or form, all people that had some form of monetary wealth had their money tied up in real estate. I just started looking at it and checking into it, dabbling in it, if you will, and it turned out it was something that I like to do, being able to speculate and invest in real estate. And it kind of goes hand in hand with, some of the things that we teach in martial arts is that, in martial arts, one of the things we do is we're trying to create tomorrow's leaders today. We're looking to improve the community one student at a time, through character and leadership training. And it's that same thing that I'm doing here in real estate. I enjoy seeing people take a set of keys from my hand and being able to build their community one key at a time. They're out there starting their lives and building their own lives, with their families. And it brings a lot of joy to me to be able to help somebody do that.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of what's happening out in your area price-wise. Where do you see prices today versus 6 months ago, and maybe where they're going to be heading in another 6 months?
Well, in our area especially, I think, and I think it holds true throughout California, for the first time in many, many months, house prices have stabilized. They're flatlined over here. They're not really going up. They're not really going down. I think that what we have is kind of a corrective market.
Right.
Interest rates started going up a tad bit. Actually, interest rates are, I think, at their highest point since 2011, and they're still relatively low. I still think back to when I bought my first house. A 9% interest rate was normal back then.
Right. I agree.
So I say that almost tongue in cheek when I say it's at their highest point. But interest rates did go down a little bit, and I don't think it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. I think it's a corrective market, and with a proper portfolio, you can negotiate your way to a really, really good deal on houses. And sellers are realizing that they're going to have to be reasonable with the asking prices on the houses if they're going to move their houses. The higher echelon houses, $1.5 million, $2 million houses, they're sitting on the market for 15, 18, 24 months at a time, whereas the $300,000 to $475,000 houses, they're averaging about 45 days, and they're getting moved. So I actually like this market. It's definitely a market that investors should be looking in because there are some great deals to be had out there.
Do you see more buyers or more sellers? Like you said, it's an even mix right now, or is it just because it's early in the year and we don't yet know what's going to happen?
We saw a little bit of a shift towards a lot of buyers getting a hold of us. When the interest rate dropped a little bit, people started coming in wanting to find out about being pre-qualified and being able to get into a house. They've got some great loan programs out there for buyer assistance, first-time buyers, and of course, ever since everything, all the changes in 2007, 2008. As long as you're coming in with the ability to back up what you're saying you make, I really think that these loan programs are pretty solid. These 30-year fixed-rate mortgages are really, really good to look at.
Now, the sweet spot you mentioned was up to about $350,000 where property is moving pretty quickly?
350 to 4.5 is moving pretty quickly still.
I see.
When you start getting up over that 450,000, it's slowing a little bit.
Now, I've been out to Temecula, love the area, love the town, thinks that it's kind of one of those jewels that a lot of people who live on the coast have no idea exists out there. But it's a great city. I really enjoy the time I've spent out there. Did a lot of racing out there in the past couple of years. What are some of the other attractions that you think might, be something that people who are listening to the show would think twice about maybe moving down to Temecula?
God, Temecula, number one, the cost of living here, even though it's in California, is a little less than San Diego. But, you've got suburban area, you've got rural area, you've got horse farms, you've got agricultural. You've pretty much got the whole thing out here. You've got $900 million homes.
Right.
You've got $225,000 homes out here. So we've pretty much got the whole gambit out here.
Right.
Lots are slightly larger than in most of the surrounding areas. People are very polite out here.
Mm-hmm.
Weather's great. Not too many days of rain, although this year we've definitely had our share of moisture this year. But
yeah, how's it affected you? I know in most of the area that the show is on, it's affected a lot of it. Rivers are overflowing. People are just worried about mudslides and things like that. How about down where you are?
Well, we don't have any rivers to worry about over here. We're considered a desert community.
Right.
It's made doing open houses a little bit of a challenge just because there's a lot of mud on the side of the roads when you're putting your signs out. But all in all, we're still out there, grinding at it every day. Our group at our location, we hold at least 2 open houses a week. So
I see.
We're still out there pounding the pavement and making it happen.
What's the main obstacle towards getting a home right now for a first-time home buyer?
Realistically, I think the biggest obstacle for a first-time home buyer is just FICO preparation, just making sure that they've kind of protected their credit. You don't have to have stellar credit, but you got to show some type of history of making on-time payments with everything and having a somewhat decent credit score. Everybody, of course, has their low FICO deals, but for a first-time home buyer, it's something that if somebody were to come to me, I would tell them that they'd want to plan at least 12 to 18 months in advance.
Right.
Just to be ready for it. Make sure that you've got all those annoying little collections cleaned off of your credit and all the rest of it. Just, prepare. You're going to have a kid, you usually prepare. You're going to buy a house, that's going to be a kid that you're going to be with for 30 years, so let's make sure we prepare for that too.
Marcos, thank you very much for coming on the show. We're up against the clock, but I really appreciate you doing this. I want to do it again. I know it sometimes can be kind of a hassle to talk to somebody that you don't know about something that's near and dear to your heart, so I really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you, Jeff. Thank you for having me on the show, and look forward to the next time we get to speak again.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This is Marcos Sanchez from eXp Realty of California, 619-279-4715. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry, and we'll see you next time.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. For more on today's topic, visit www.malibufunding.net.